What's going on, everybody? My name is Mike Montgomery, and today I'd like to show you how to build this 3-tiered shelf that I built out of 3/4 inch plywood and 2-inch dowels. I did this really neat PVC inlay on the top that I'm excited to show off to you guys. So let's get started on Modern Builds. I'm going to start this project by cutting out my shelves. I'm using 3/4 inch plywood and I'm cutting 3 16 by 40 inch long pieces. I got it cut to width at my Home Depot, and here I'm just cutting it to length with a circular saw and a straight edge. As you saw, the legs are made from these big 2-inch dowels, so I need to drill holes in my bottom 2 shelves so that the legs can go through it. I bought a really big set of Forstner bits from Amazon that I'll leave a link to down in the description. They're not the best in the world, but for the price, they did a great job. I just tried to make sure I was drilling as straight as possible so that my bit wouldn't wander. So like I showed at the beginning of the video, the top shelf is gonna have that cool white inlay, and I'm using PVC to get that done. The dowels I'm making my legs out of are 2 inches. That's why I drilled 2-inch holes on my bottom 2 shelves. But for the top one, I'm gonna have to drill an 1 7/8" hole. That way it fits the diameter of this pipe and it's still snug. I'll also leave a link to these dowels that I got from Amazon as well. They're 2 inches thick and they're made from maple, which really surprised me for the price. The first thing I did to them was mark and cut them to length. I cut them about 1 inch longer than the height of the final drawer. That way I could trim it off at the top and sand it flush. Here I'm setting up a really simple table saw jig that's gonna allow me to make a tenon on the end of these dowels. The first thing I did was I clamped a 2x4 to the tabletop of my table saw perpendicular to my saw blade. Then I clamped a piece of plywood to act as my stop. Now I'm sure I'm not the first person to make this jig, but it worked out really great. I just made sure to keep my fingers safe from the blade and always be aware of where my hands were, and I just constantly spun the dowel while slowly moving it forward as the blade cut it. I know this may look a little funky and like it might not be safe, but it is. Each piece has 2 clamps on it that are very secure. These boards aren't going anywhere unless the tabletop falls off. I'm doing this step this way because I feel comfortable doing it. If you don't feel comfortable, don't do this. Remember, table saws are dangerous just like any tools, and don't use a tool unless you feel comfortable using it that way. Now let's keep moving. So now that I had a tenon cut on the end of all my dowels, I could cut my pieces of 2-inch PVC. It's called 2-inch PVC, but it's really about 1 7/8" thick. I decided to use some quick 5-minute epoxy to attach the PVC to the ends of the dowels. This silicone glue applicator kit from Rockler is really cool. It's made for wood glue, but it also works with epoxy. Once it dries, you can just peel it right off and there's no mess. They're not a sponsor, but I'll leave a link down in the description. It's just a cool product. I used painter's tape to make sure that epoxy didn't get all over the dowel, so it would save me a lot of cleanup later on. I want to give a huge thank you to Squarespace for continuing to sponsor Modern Builds. As y'all know, I've been using and repping Squarespace for a long time now. About 2 years ago, when I built the first Modern Builds website, Squarespace is who I've used, and I haven't used another website builder since. The platform is stupid easy to use. They've got incredibly beautiful templates ready to go. All you have to do is be able to drag and drop files, and you're on your way to an awesome website. One thing I love about Squarespace that I haven't talked about before is their analytics. Normally, that's not something that people get super excited about, but it should be. For someone like me running an online business, knowing where I'm getting traffic from and where I should be doubling down efforts is super valuable. Maybe you're just using a Squarespace website as a portfolio to help sell your work. Well, knowing what social media posts and what blog articles are doing well can help you target an audience or a customer base a lot more effectively. There's gonna be a link right down in the description of the video, squarespace.com/modernbuilds, where you can get a free 14-day trial and see if Squarespace is the right fit for you. Not to mention, you can use the code ModernBuilds to get 10% off your first purchase. Thanks, Squarespace. Before I assembled all my pieces, I thought it would be a lot easier to get everything sanded first. So I sanded everything to 220 grit, then I measured out for my shelves. There's a 4-inch gap between the ground and the first shelf, and from there, everything is evenly spaced. I started by clamping my middle shelf to my workbench and knocking all of my dowels in place. I didn't use any glue or anything. These things were super tight. Although some of them didn't go in perfectly square, so I hit them with my rubber mallet to overextend them, then I could put them back in place and they would sit straight. As you can see, I did use epoxy though for my top shelf. This is what's gonna anchor everything in, and I wanted the seal between the PVC and the plywood to be really tight. Once I had my top shelf knocked into place, I came back with a chisel and I cut the edge of the epoxy all the way around the dowel. Then I could peel away my painter's tape to reveal a really clean joint. This is why I cut my dowels an inch or so long. That way I could come back with a flush trim saw and trim them flush with the tabletop. I used my belt sander to get everything nice and flat. Then I flipped my whole shelf over and I knocked my bottom shelf into place. I didn't use any epoxy on this one either. The friction of all of the pieces working against each other kind of held it all square. I did consider doing edge banding, but I decided to embrace the plies and really show off that end grain of the plywood. It kind of made everything really modern and fit the whole theme. So I hope you guys enjoyed this project. It was a ton of fun experimenting with these super thick 2-inch dowels. I was surprised at how cheap they were on Amazon, and they're all really nice maple dowels. They've got all kinds of sizes, and I've got a ton of ideas on how I might be able to incorporate some of these in the future. Now, I'm not 100% sure if I'm the first person to do this PVC inlay, but I hunted online and I haven't seen anyone else do it before. With that being said, pretty much every idea seems to have been done before, so if you've seen this, shoot me a link on Instagram. I'd love to check it out. I want to give a really big thank you to everybody that purchased some of my merch that I put out a month or so ago. I probably should have done this sooner, but I just want to say I really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. I've already sold out of a couple sizes of t-shirts, but if you're interested in picking one up, there's a link down in the description, modernbuilds.com/store, if you want to support too. Thanks again to Squarespace. They are amazing. Make sure and check them out if you haven't already. I honestly couldn't recommend them more. If you're new to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you considered subscribing. That way you can stay updated every time I post a new video. And if you have any questions or comments about this project, go ahead and leave those below. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week on Modern Builds.